Maria Santos wiped the sweat from her forehead as she hurried through the narrow hallways of the government building. Her white uniform was perfectly pressed, her hair neatly pulled back in a bun, and her hands trembled slightly as she balanced the heavy silver tray. The morning rush had been particularly demanding, with officials requesting coffee every few minutes, and her supervisor had made it clear that any mistakes would not be tolerated. She had been working as a coffee server for 3 months now, ever since she moved from her small village to the capital city. The job barely paid enough to cover her tiny apartment rent and send a little money back to her elderly mother, but it was honest work, and Maria took pride in doing it well. Every morning, she arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, prepared the coffee equipment, and spent the day ensuring that every government official received their beverages exactly as they preferred. The building buzzed with activity that Tuesday morning. Important meetings were scheduled throughout the day, and Maria had been briefed that several high-ranking military officials would be visiting. She was told to be extra careful with their service, as these men commanded respect and demanded perfection. Her supervisor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had specifically warned her about General Martinez, who was known for his strict demeanor and attention to detail. Maria knocked softly on the conference room door and waited for permission to enter. The voice that called out was deep and authoritative, sending a small shiver down her spine. She pushed the door open carefully and stepped inside, keeping her eyes focused on the tray to ensure she didn't spill anything. The room was filled with men in military uniforms, their medals catching the light from the large windows that overlooked the city square. As she began placing coffee cups around the large mahogany table, Maria became aware of an unusual silence in the room. The conversations that had been flowing when she first entered seemed to have stopped abruptly. She glanced up briefly and noticed that several of the officers were looking in her direction, but she quickly returned her attention to her task, not wanting to appear unprofessional or disrespectful. When she reached the head of the table, Maria carefully placed a cup in front of the man who was clearly the highest-ranking officer present. His uniform bore more decorations than the others, and his presence seemed to command the attention of everyone in the room. As she leaned forward to set down his coffee, she felt his eyes on her, intense and unwavering. General Martinez had been reviewing documents when the young woman entered the room. He had barely looked up initially, accustomed to the various staff members who moved in and out of meetings throughout the day. But something about her movement, perhaps the careful way she carried herself or the gentle sound of her footsteps, made him raise his head. When he saw her face, his world seemed to shift on its axis. The papers in his hands forgotten, General Martinez stared at the young woman serving coffee. Her features were delicate but strong, her dark eyes focused intently on her work, and there was something about her presence that made his heart race in a way it hadn't in years. He tried to rationalize the feeling, telling himself it was simply fatigue from the long hours he had been working, but he couldn't look away. Maria finished serving the coffee and began to quietly retreat from the room, but as she reached the door, she heard the general's voice call out. Her heart skipped a beat as she turned around, wondering if she had made some mistake with his coffee or committed some breach of protocol she wasn't aware of. The general's voice was gentler than she had expected when he asked her to wait for a moment. The other officers in the room exchanged glances, clearly surprised by this unusual request. General Martinez was known for his strictly professional demeanor and rarely engaged with support staff beyond necessary interactions. His request for the coffee server to remain was unprecedented. Maria stood by the door, her hands clasped in front of her, waiting respectfully for whatever the general needed to tell her. She noticed that his expression had softened considerably from the stern look she had observed when she first entered the room. There was something in his eyes that she couldn't quite identify, a mixture of surprise and something else that made her feel strangely nervous and curious at the same time. The silence in the room stretched for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only a few seconds. The general seemed to be struggling with something, opening his mouth as if to speak, and then closing it again. Finally, he cleared his throat and asked if she was new to the building, his voice carrying a warmth that surprised everyone present, including himself. Maria replied that she had been working there for 3 months, her voice soft but clear. She maintained eye contact respectfully but briefly, as she had been trained to do when addressing superior officers. The general nodded slowly, as if processing this information, and then asked for her name. When she responded that she was Maria Santos, he repeated it quietly, as if testing how it sounded. The other officers began to shift uncomfortably in their seats, clearly puzzled by this unexpected interaction. General Martinez was a decorated war hero, a man who had dedicated his life to military service and had never shown interest in anything beyond his duties to his country. His behavior toward this young coffee server was completely out of character and was beginning to create an atmosphere of confusion and curiosity in the room. Realizing that he was creating an unusual situation, General Martinez dismissed Maria with a polite thank you, but not before taking one last long look at her face. As she left the room, closing the door gently behind her, he found himself unable to concentrate on the meeting at hand. His mind kept returning to her dark eyes and the way she had carried herself with such dignity despite her humble position. Maria walked back to the kitchen area in a daze, replaying the encounter in her mind. She had served coffee to many important officials over the past 3 months, but none had ever spoken to her the way the general had. There had been something different in his voice, something that made her feel seen as a person rather than just another piece of furniture in the room. Her colleague, Carmen, noticed her distracted state and asked if everything was all right. Maria wasn't sure how to explain what had just happened, partly because she wasn't entirely sure herself. She simply said that the meeting had gone fine and busied herself with preparing for the next round of coffee service, but her thoughts remained fixed on the general's unexpected attention and the strange feeling it had awakened in her chest. Over the following days, Maria found herself thinking about the encounter with General Martinez more often than she cared to admit. She went about her daily routine of serving coffee and attending to various officials, but there was a new awareness in her movements, a small part of her that hoped she might see him again. She told herself it was simply curiosity about why he had spoken to her, but deep down she knew there was something more. General Martinez, meanwhile, was experiencing his own internal struggle. As one of the most respected military leaders in the country, he had built his reputation on discipline, focus, and unwavering commitment to duty. Personal relationships had always taken a backseat to his responsibilities, and at 45 years old, he had resigned himself to a life devoted entirely to service. The brief encounter with Maria had shaken that resolve in ways he couldn't understand. He found himself asking subtle questions about the coffee service schedule, learning when Maria would be working, and which areas of the building she typically served. He told himself it was simply administrative curiosity, but his aide, Captain Morales, began to notice the general's unusual interest in what had previously been mundane operational details. 3 days after their first meeting, General Martinez had another conference scheduled in the same room. He arrived early, something that was typical for him, but this time he found himself paying attention to sounds in the hallway, listening for the soft footsteps that might indicate Maria was approaching with the morning coffee service. When Maria knocked on the door that morning, her heart was beating faster than usual. She had convinced herself that the previous encounter had been a fluke, that the general had probably forgotten all about her, but she couldn't shake the nervous excitement she felt as she prepared to enter the room again. This time, when she entered, General Martinez was alone in the conference room, reviewing documents spread across the large table. He looked up immediately when she came in, and Maria noticed that his expression was different from the stern mask she had observed during their first meeting. There was an anticipation in his eyes, as if he had been waiting for her arrival. She went about her task of setting up the coffee service, but the silence in the room felt different this time. It wasn't the comfortable quiet of routine work, but rather the charged atmosphere of two people who were very aware of each other's presence. Maria tried to focus on her duties, but she could feel his gaze following her movements around the room. When she approached his place at the table to set down his coffee, General Martinez spoke again, his voice softer than his usual command tone. He thanked her for the excellent service she had been providing and mentioned that he had heard positive reports about her work from other officials in the building. Maria felt a flush of pride at the compliment, but also a deeper warmth from the way he was looking at her. Encouraged by her shy smile in response to his praise, General Martinez found himself asking about her background. Where was she from? How long had she been in the capital? Maria answered his questions politely, telling him about her small village in the mountains and her mother who lived alone there. She mentioned that she sent money home each month and hoped to save enough to bring her mother to the city for better medical care. Something in her story touched General Martinez deeply. Here was a young woman who was working hard in a humble job, not for personal gain or ambition, but out of love and dedication to her family. The contrast between her pure motivations and the political maneuvering he dealt with daily in his professional life was striking and refreshing. As Maria finished her service and prepared to leave, General Martinez made a decision that surprised even himself. He asked if she would be willing to personally handle the coffee service for his office, explaining that he preferred consistency in such matters and had been impressed by her professionalism. The request would mean a slight increase in her responsibilities and a small raise in pay, which he mentioned almost as an afterthought. Maria was taken aback by the offer. Personal service to such a high-ranking official was an honor that could advance her career in the building, and the extra money would help her save more quickly for her mother's needs. She accepted gratefully, though she wondered if there were other reasons behind his request that neither of them was ready to acknowledge. When Captain Morales arrived for the scheduled meeting 30 minutes later, he found General Martinez in an unusually good mood. The general was more engaged in the discussions than he had been in recent weeks, and there was an energy about him that the captain hadn't seen in quite some time. When asked about it, General Martinez simply attributed it to a good night's sleep and productive morning planning session. Maria returned to the kitchen area with mixed feelings about her new assignment. Carmen congratulated her on the promotion, but also warned her to be careful. High-ranking officials sometimes had ulterior motives for singling out young female staff members, and Maria's innocence and beauty made her particularly vulnerable. Maria appreciated the concern, but something in her gut told her that General Martinez was different from the other men who had occasionally made inappropriate comments or suggestions. That afternoon, Maria reported to General Martinez's private office for the first time. The space was impressive but surprisingly personal, with photographs of military ceremonies, maps of various regions, and a few small items that suggested interests beyond military matters. There were books on history and philosophy, a chess set, and a small photograph of an elderly woman who Maria assumed was his mother. General Martinez was reviewing reports when she arrived, but he immediately set aside his work to show her where the coffee supplies were kept and how he preferred his beverages prepared. His instructions were clear and professional, but Maria noticed moments when their hands accidentally brushed as he demonstrated the coffee preparation process, and each contact sent small electric shocks through both of them. Over the following weeks, their daily interactions developed into a comfortable routine. Maria would arrive at his office each morning with coffee and light refreshments, and General Martinez would always take a few minutes to ask about her well-being and share brief conversations about current events or her observations about life in the capital city. These moments became the highlights of both their days. General Martinez found himself looking forward to these conversations with an intensity that both pleased and worried him. Maria's perspectives were fresh and honest, untainted by political considerations or personal agendas. She spoke about things she had read in newspapers or observed during her commute through the city, and her insights often surprised him with their wisdom and compassion. Maria, for her part, began to see beyond the general's intimidating reputation to the thoughtful, caring man underneath. He remembered details about her life and asked follow-up questions about her mother's health and her own dreams for the future. He had begun recommending books from his personal library, and their discussions about these shared readings added depth to their growing connection. The attraction between them was becoming impossible to ignore, though neither was ready to openly acknowledge it. General Martinez struggled with the impropriety of developing feelings for someone so far below his social station, while Maria convinced herself that any special attention from such an important man was simply kindness and had no deeper meaning. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday morning in November. Maria had been serving General Martinez's office for nearly 2 months, and their daily conversations had become an essential part of both their routines. On this particular morning, Maria arrived at work with red-rimmed eyes and a distracted manner that immediately caught the general's attention. When she entered his office with the morning coffee, her usual bright greeting was replaced by a subdued nod. General Martinez noticed that her hands shook slightly as she prepared his cup, and there were traces of tears on her cheeks that she had tried unsuccessfully to wipe away. His concern overrode his usual professional boundaries, and he gently asked what was troubling her. Maria tried to dismiss his concern, saying it was just a personal matter and nothing that should interfere with her work. But General Martinez persisted with a kindness that broke down her defenses. Finally, she revealed that she had received a letter from her village the previous evening. Her mother's health had taken a serious turn for the worse, and the local doctor recommended immediate treatment at a specialized hospital in the capital city. The cost of bringing her mother to the city and paying for the necessary medical care was far beyond anything Maria could afford, even with her recent raise. She had spent the entire night calculating and recalculating her meager savings, but there was no way to make the numbers work. Her voice broke as she explained that she felt helpless, unable to provide for the woman who had sacrificed everything to raise her alone after Maria's father died when she was young. General Martinez listened to her story with growing emotion. The dedication Maria showed to her mother reminded him of his own relationship with his late mother, who had died 5 years earlier. He understood the depth of her pain and the desperation of feeling powerless to help someone you love. Without hesitation, he offered to help with the medical expenses. Maria was overwhelmed by his generosity, but also deeply conflicted. Accepting such a significant amount of money from him felt wrong, though she couldn't afford to refuse help that could save her mother's life. She tried to insist that she could find another way, perhaps by taking on additional work or asking for a loan from the bank. But General Martinez gently pointed out that time was crucial in medical matters and bureaucracy could delay help for weeks or months. After much discussion, they reached an agreement that allowed Maria to maintain her dignity while accepting his assistance. General Martinez would arrange for the best doctors in the city to treat her mother, and Maria would repay him slowly over time, with a schedule that wouldn't create financial hardship for her. He made it clear that her job security wasn't dependent on this arrangement, and that he genuinely wanted to help without expecting anything in return. Within 2 days, arrangements were made for Maria's mother to be transported to the capital and admitted to the finest private hospital in the city. The speed and efficiency with which General Martinez handled the logistics demonstrated the considerable influence and resources at his disposal. Maria was amazed to see how quickly barriers disappeared when someone of his status made requests on her behalf. When Maria's mother, Elena Santos, arrived at the hospital, she was weak but alert enough to be curious about the circumstances that had made her daughter's rescue possible. Maria had been deliberately vague about the details, mentioning only that her supervisor had been kind enough to help arrange better medical care. Elena, however, was a shrewd woman despite her humble background, and she sensed there was more to the story than her daughter was revealing. General Martinez visited the hospital several times, officially to check on the arrangements and ensure that Elena was receiving proper care. Unofficially, he found himself genuinely concerned about the older woman's recovery and curious about the person who had raised someone as remarkable as Maria. During these visits, he was struck by the similarities between mother and daughter, particularly their dignity in the face of hardship and their gratitude without servility. Elena Santos was initially intimidated by the distinguished military officer who seemed to take such a personal interest in her case, but she quickly recognized the kindness beneath his formal manner. More importantly, she observed the way his eyes followed her daughter around the room and the way Maria's entire demeanor changed when he was present. As someone who had experienced deep love in her own youth, Elena recognized the signs of two people falling for each other, even when they hadn't acknowledged it themselves. The medical treatment was successful, and Elena's condition improved steadily over the following weeks. During her recovery, she had many opportunities to observe the growing relationship between her daughter and General Martinez. Their conversations during his visits were filled with genuine interest and caring, and Elena could see that whatever was developing between them was based on mutual respect and affection rather than mere attraction or convenience. One afternoon, while Maria was handling some administrative matters related to her mother's care, Elena found herself alone with General Martinez in the hospital room. With the directness that comes from age and experience, she thanked him for his help and then asked him directly about his intentions regarding her daughter. The question caught him off guard, but he appreciated her protective instincts and straightforward approach. General Martinez found himself being more honest with Elena than he had been with himself. He admitted that he had developed deep feelings for Maria, but was struggling with the complications their different social positions would create. He spoke about his concerns that pursuing a relationship with her could damage her reputation or put her in an uncomfortable position given their professional relationship and the debt she now owed him for her mother's medical care. Elena listened carefully to his concerns and then shared her own observations. She told him that Maria had never been happier than she had been over the past few months, and that her daughter spoke about him with a respect and affection that went far beyond professional appreciation. Elena pointed out that true love was rare and precious, and that social conventions, while important, shouldn't be allowed to destroy something genuine and beautiful. Their conversation was interrupted by Maria's return, but Alina's words had given General Martinez much to think about. Over the following days, he found himself paying closer attention to Maria's responses to him, looking for signs that his feelings might be reciprocated. What he saw gave him hope, but also increased his internal conflict about the appropriate course of action. Maria, meanwhile, was experiencing her own emotional turmoil. Her gratitude to General Martinez for saving her mother's life was immense, but she was also becoming increasingly aware that her feelings for him went far beyond appreciation. She caught herself thinking about him during her free time, wondering what he was doing and looking forward to their daily interactions with an anticipation that felt different from professional enthusiasm. The situation reached a crisis point when another military officer, Colonel Rodriguez, began making pointed comments about the general's obvious favoritism toward Maria. The colonel had noticed the unusual amount of personal attention General Martinez was paying to a coffee server and began spreading subtle hints that the relationship might be inappropriate. These rumors eventually reached Mrs. Rodriguez, Maria's supervisor, who felt compelled to address the situation. Mrs. Rodriguez called Maria into her office and explained that there had been talk about her special arrangement with General Martinez. While she personally believed that Maria was conducting herself appropriately, the appearance of impropriety could damage both Maria's reputation and her job security. She suggested that it might be wise for Maria to request reassignment to different duties to avoid further gossip. Maria was devastated by this conversation. She realized that her growing feelings for General Martinez and his kindness toward her family had created a situation that could threaten everything she had worked for. At the same time, the thought of losing her daily interactions with him felt like losing something essential to her happiness. She found herself facing an impossible choice between protecting her career and following her heart. The weight of Mrs. Rodriguez's warning pressed heavily on Maria's mind as she went about her duties over the next few days. She tried to maintain her usual professional demeanor when serving General Martinez, but he immediately noticed the change in her behavior. The warm conversations that had become the highlight of both their days were replaced by brief, formal exchanges that left him puzzled and concerned. General Martinez attempted several times to engage Maria in their usual discussions, asking about her mother's progress and mentioning books he thought she might enjoy. However, Maria's responses were polite but distant, and she seemed to find excuses to leave his office more quickly than before. The sudden shift in her behavior was so pronounced that he began to worry that he had somehow offended her or made her uncomfortable. Unable to concentrate on his work while this mystery remained unsolved, General Martinez decided to investigate the situation. He discreetly inquired about any changes in the coffee service protocols and eventually learned about the rumors that had been circulating regarding his relationship with Maria. The discovery that office gossip was affecting her professional standing filled him with anger and determination to protect her from further harm. Captain Morales, who had observed the general's increasingly troubled mood, finally worked up the courage to address the situation directly. He had noticed the change in the general's demeanor coinciding with the altered coffee service routine and suspected there was a connection. With characteristic military directness, he asked if there was anything he could do to help resolve whatever was troubling his commander. General Martinez found himself confiding in his trusted aide about the situation with Maria. He explained how their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, how helping with her mother's medical care had created both a bond and a complication, and how the current rumors were threatening to damage her reputation unfairly. Captain Morales listened without judgment and then offered perspective that proved valuable. The captain pointed out that General Martinez had never been one to let other people's opinions dictate his decisions in military matters, and perhaps the same principle should apply to personal matters. He also noted that if the general's feelings for Maria were genuine and reciprocated, then finding a way to honorably pursue the relationship might be better than allowing rumors and speculation to destroy something meaningful for both of them. Meanwhile, Maria was struggling with her own decision about how to handle the situation. She had considered requesting a transfer to different duties within the building, but the thought of losing her daily contact with General Martinez was painful. Moreover, she realized that avoiding him wouldn't necessarily stop the rumors and might even make them worse, by suggesting that there had been something inappropriate to hide. Elena Santos, who had been released from the hospital and was staying with Maria while she continued her recovery, noticed her daughter's distress and pressed her for an explanation. When Maria finally confided about the workplace rumors and the pressure to distance herself from General Martinez, Elena's response was both practical and surprising. Elena pointed out that Maria had done nothing wrong by being professional and grateful to someone who had helped their family during a crisis. She reminded her daughter that General Martinez had conducted himself with complete honor throughout their interactions, and that allowing gossip to destroy a potentially meaningful relationship would be a tragedy for both of them. Elena encouraged Maria to have an honest conversation with the general about the situation, rather than simply retreating without explanation. The conversation Maria had been avoiding finally took place on a Friday afternoon when General Martinez asked her to stay after delivering his afternoon coffee. His request was made in a tone that suggested official business rather than personal conversation, which both reassured and worried Maria about what he might have to say. General Martinez began by acknowledging that he was aware of the rumors circulating about their relationship and expressing his regret that his attention had created difficulties for her at work. He made it clear that he took full responsibility for any problems the situation had caused and was prepared to make whatever changes necessary to protect her professional standing. Maria was moved by his willingness to take blame for a situation that she felt was equally her responsibility. She explained about Mrs. Rodriguez's warning and her own confusion about how to handle the developing feelings between them. For the first time, she admitted openly that her feelings toward him had grown beyond professional appreciation into something deeper and more personal. The mutual confession of their feelings created both relief and new complexity. General Martinez explained his own internal struggle with the appropriateness of pursuing a relationship with someone in such a different social and professional position. He spoke about his concerns that his rank and influence might make it difficult for Maria to feel truly free to choose whether or not to be involved with him. Maria responded with a maturity and insight that reinforced his respect for her character. She pointed out that she was an adult capable of making her own decisions, and that his concern for her welfare and autonomy actually demonstrated why she trusted him enough to develop feelings in the first place. She also noted that their economic backgrounds might be different, but their values and character seemed to be well matched. Their honest conversation led to a decision to pursue their relationship openly, but carefully. General Martinez would speak to his superiors about the situation to ensure that there were no official conflicts of interest, and they would both be transparent about their relationship with appropriate colleagues to prevent further speculation and rumor. They agreed that Maria's job security would be completely independent of their personal relationship. The following Monday, General Martinez requested a meeting with his commanding officer, General Rodriguez, to discuss what he termed a personal matter that might affect his professional responsibilities. He explained the situation with Maria honestly and completely, including the financial assistance he had provided for her mother's medical care and the feelings that had developed between them. General Rodriguez was initially surprised by the revelation, but he had known General Martinez for many years and trusted his judgment and integrity. After asking several questions about the timeline of events and the current nature of their relationship, he concluded that no military regulations had been violated and that the general had handled a delicate situation with appropriate honor and discretion. The official blessing for their relationship removed the primary obstacle that had been troubling General Martinez, but he was still concerned about the social differences that might affect Maria's comfort in his world. He decided to introduce her gradually to his social circle, beginning with informal gatherings where she could meet other military families in relaxed settings. Maria's first social event with General Martinez was a small dinner party at the home of Captain Morales and his wife. The evening was designed to be casual and welcoming, giving Maria an opportunity to experience military social culture without the pressure of a large formal gathering. She was nervous but determined to make a good impression and show that she could fit into the general's social world. The evening went better than either of them had hoped. Maria's natural grace and intelligence shone through her initial nervousness, and the other guests were charmed by her warmth and genuine interest in their lives. Captain Morales's wife, Carmen, was particularly supportive, sharing stories about her own adjustment to military social life when she had married into the community from a civilian background. By the end of the evening, Maria felt more confident about her ability to navigate the social expectations that would come with a relationship with General Martinez. The other guests had treated her with respect and kindness, and she realized that the social barriers she had feared might be more manageable than she had anticipated. General Martinez was proud of how well Maria had handled herself during the evening and pleased with how warmly his friends had received her. The successful social introduction gave him confidence that their relationship could work despite the challenges they would face, and he began to consider the possibility that their feelings might develop into something permanent and lasting. 6 months after that first dinner party, Maria had become a regular part of General Martinez's social circle and had proven herself to be not only charming, but also an asset to his career. Her insights into civilian perspectives often proved valuable during his strategic planning meetings, and her genuine warmth had won over even the most traditional military wives who had initially been skeptical about her background. The relationship between Maria and General Martinez had deepened into a profound partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love. Elena Santos had recovered completely from her health crisis and had been able to witness her daughter's transformation from a struggling coffee server into a confident young woman who had found her place in a world she had never imagined entering. General Martinez had introduced Maria to aspects of military life and strategic thinking that fascinated her quick mind, while she had helped him reconnect with the simple pleasures and human connections that his demanding career had sometimes forced him to neglect. Their different backgrounds had become a source of strength rather than division, as each brought perspectives and experiences that enriched the other's understanding of the world. The question of marriage had been in both their minds for several months, but General Martinez wanted to be certain that Maria was ready for the significant life changes that would come with becoming a military wife. He also wanted to ensure that her mother was completely settled and comfortable with the idea of her daughter marrying someone from such a different world. Elena Santos had grown to love General Martinez almost like a son, appreciating not only his kindness to her family, but also the obvious happiness he brought to Maria's life. During one of their regular Sunday dinners, she took the opportunity to tell him directly that she would be honored to welcome him into their family, and that Maria's father would have approved of the man his daughter had chosen. With Elena's blessing secured and his own feelings clearer than ever, General Martinez began planning a proposal that would honor both Maria's humble origins and her current place in his life. He wanted something that acknowledged their unique journey together while celebrating the future they could build as partners. The proposal took place in the garden of the government building where they had first met. On the anniversary of the day, Maria had first served him coffee. General Martinez had arranged for the garden to be decorated with flowers from Maria's home village, and Elena was secretly positioned nearby to witness the moment her daughter's dreams came true. When General Martinez dropped to one knee and presented the engagement ring, his words were simple but profound. He told Maria that she had transformed his understanding of what it meant to love and be loved, and that he wanted to spend the rest of his life proving worthy of the gift she had given him by sharing her heart. He promised to honor her family, protect her dreams, and stand beside her as an equal partner in whatever challenges and joys the future might bring. Maria's acceptance was immediate and joyful, but she also took the opportunity to express her own promises to him. She told him that loving him had taught her that true partnership meant supporting each other's growth and dreams, and that she was prepared to embrace the responsibilities that would come with being his wife while maintaining her own identity and values. The engagement announcement was met with widespread celebration among their friends and colleagues. Captain Morales organized a party for the military community, while Mrs. Rodriguez and the other building staff arranged their own celebration to honor Maria's remarkable journey from coffee server to the general's fiancée. The wedding planning process became an exercise in blending their two worlds thoughtfully and respectfully. Maria insisted on including traditions from her village culture, while General Martinez ensured that military customs were honored appropriately. The ceremony was designed to celebrate their love while acknowledging the unique path that had brought them together. Elena Santos played a central role in the wedding preparations, working closely with General Martinez's family and friends to create an event that honored both their backgrounds. Her health was completely restored, and she had found a new sense of purpose in helping to build the bridge between her daughter's past and future. The wedding itself was a beautiful blend of military tradition and village customs, held in the historic cathedral in the center of the capital city. Maria wore her grandmother's pearls along with a modern gown that had been a gift from General Martinez's sister, symbolizing the connection between her heritage and her future. General Martinez wore his full military dress uniform, but during the ceremony he spoke vows that he had written himself, promising to love Maria not in spite of her humble origins, but because of the strength and character those origins had given her. He pledged to never let his position or status create distance between them, and to always remember that their love had grown from mutual respect and genuine affection. After the ceremony, the reception featured music and food from both their traditions, creating a celebration that truly reflected who they were as a couple. The evening was filled with stories about their unlikely meeting and the journey that had brought them to this moment, with many guests commenting on how perfectly matched they seemed despite their different backgrounds. Elena Santos gave a toast at the reception that brought tears to many eyes. She spoke about watching her daughter grow from a young girl carrying water from the village well into a confident woman who had found love with a man worthy of her character. She thanked General Martinez for seeing Maria's true worth and expressed her pride in having both of them as family. 1 year later, Maria and General Martinez celebrated their first wedding anniversary in the same garden where he had proposed. Maria was pregnant with their first child, and they spent the afternoon discussing their dreams for their growing family and their shared future. General Martinez had been promoted to an even higher position within the military hierarchy, and Maria had become known throughout the capital as a gracious and intelligent military wife who brought dignity and warmth to every social and official function she attended. Her background as a coffee server had become a source of pride rather than embarrassment, as people admired the journey she had made and the authenticity she maintained despite her elevated position. Elena Santos lived comfortably in a small house near the couple, where she helped care for their children and maintained her role as the family's wise counselor and beloved grandmother. She often told people that her daughter's story proved that love and character were more powerful than social position or wealth in creating true happiness. The couple established a scholarship fund for young women from rural villages who wanted to pursue education or career opportunities in the capital city. Maria personally interviewed scholarship candidates and often shared her own story as encouragement for young women who felt overwhelmed by the challenges of changing their circumstances. General Martinez often reflected on how a simple coffee service assignment had changed his entire life. He credited Maria with teaching him that true leadership meant serving others with humility and that personal happiness was not incompatible with professional excellence. Their marriage had made him a better officer and a more complete human being. Their love story became legendary within the military community and beyond, often cited as an example of how genuine connection could transcend social boundaries when two people were willing to see beyond surface differences to appreciate each other's character and values. Maria and General Martinez had built a life together that honored both their individual histories and their shared future, creating a legacy of love that would inspire their children and community for generations to come.